What an incredibly glorious country you live in. I drove up from Bergen, and everybody thought that I was crazy, but that's good. In fact, when I give a speech, I try to do something that if half of you don't think I'm totally bonkers, I'm not pushing it far enough. So, just so you know, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, I drove up from Bergen. We stayed 2 or 3 nights, stayed in Gloppen, and then I stayed in a place called Åsund, when they have a little zero on the top of the A, it comes out open. I'm learning. Anyway, but I can say without doubt that we passed some of the most beautiful, fantastic environments that I've ever seen. So you guys should wake up every morning and just say, life is good. You know, it's really good. And I love your weather. It was so sunny and nice. And I don't understand why you have streetlights, because the sky was lit up last night, and clearly you don't need streetlights. Anyway, I want to talk about entrepreneurship, innovation, having fun, and the future of technology and gaming. I started here, sorta. This was a big computer called a PDP-1, and a guy named Steve Russell put a game called Space War on it. And I played it in college. But I was working at an amusement park. I put myself through school going to an amusement park. Yeah, in America, you have to pay for school. We'll figure out how to do it like you guys do someday, but we didn't then. And so I was a carny, but I was doing an engineering degree, played that game, thought to myself, if I brought this game to the amusement park, put a quarter slot on it, it'd make money. And then you divide 25 cents a play into $1 million computer. The math didn't work. So I put that on the side. 4 years later, I did Computer Space, which was basically a commercialization of the game that Steve Russell did. So in a way, I really didn't invent the video game. Steve Russell did. And I just commercialized it. And this was our brochure. The girl in the picture was a topless dancer down the street. That's a whole nother story. But this was my team, my first team. There were 2 major innovations there. One was Pong. The other was the polka dot shirt. The polka dot shirt did not catch on. These 2 guys worked for me. Actually, Steve Jobs worked for me, but Wozniak didn't. He was working at HP. And I put Jobs on the night shift for 2 reasons. He didn't bathe, which was a problem. And I thought if I put him on the night shift, Woz would come in and hang out with him. So I thought, 2 Steves for the price of 1. That's a good business decision. Anyway, so they did a game called Breakout. Man, fantastic success. It actually launched the video game business in Japan. Of course, it was because Nintendo knocked it off, but that's another story. But then later, I was offered 1/3 of Apple Computer for $50,000, which I turned down, and I have regretted it. You know, that would have been a good deal. But at the same time, you know, I introduced him to Valentine, who introduced him to various things, and you know, we know from Back to the Future that the future changes sometimes based on the way you do it. So basically, I wrote a book called Finding the Next Steve Jobs, and it's really about how do you find powerful people? And it's really about intensity. What you don't hear about Steve Jobs is how hard he worked. Steve worked, of all the people that ever worked for me, he was the only one that was regularly sleeping under his desk when I'd come in the morning after doing an all-nighter. And I actually think his health deteriorated because he had one speed, always on. And I think that the power of intensity and hard work, you can do everything. I mean, I've often thought, when he went into the board of directors and said, it was a computer company, kind of under stress at the time, he says, but wait, we're going to go in the music business. How many boards would say okay to that from a computer company? And yet, that laid the foundation for the iPhone, the iPad, the iPod, the whole thing. And those graphic, very, very intense innovations are really what makes things happen. Find passion in yourself. And the question becomes one, is passion something that you're born with? Something you learn? Can it be taught? I'm finding that random acts really, really change you and keep your passion alive, because doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, it kind of drills you down. I started playing the dice game, and you write down 11 crazy things that you can accomplish in a year. You throw the dice, and then you have to do it during that year. And every time I've done it, it's pushed my life in a very, very different direction, all of which has been fascinating and fun. I mean, the book happened because I threw the dice, and it said, write a book. Now, understand that I'm dyslexic. I can't spell. I would have never graduated from college if girlfriends wouldn't have, edited my papers for me. So the idea of reading a book or writing a book was silly. And if you can't get through freshman English, what chance do you have? Well, anyway, once you start doing things because of the dice, the biggest thing that stops you is self-editing. I'd look at writing a book, I would say I could never get it published, I'd forward think it, didn't make sense. But doing it because of the book, or because of the dice, all of a sudden, free to go, free to do it. What that did, though, as I found out, you don't have to know English. There are a lot of people that are fundamentally out of work that know a lot of English, and that they are more than happy to edit your book, make it readable, correct the spelling and grammar. I didn't know that you can't change the tense 6 times in a paragraph. Why would you need to know that? Anyway, it really is a fun part of changing up your life, and I really recommend it to everybody. Write down 11 things, throw the dice. You do it on January 1 of every year, and you just do it. What entrepreneurship and creativity in general, it's about being willing to fail, because it's risky. And once you become one with the potential of failure, you can truly start to innovate. And that's hard, because people might laugh at you. People may not trust you anymore. But in reality, today, there are venture capitalists who will not invest unless you've had one failure under your belt, because they want to know that you've been tested in the fire of failure. But you don't want to try to. But just be willing to, because that's a problem. How do you become a truly great entrepreneur with a great idea? The best thing to do is learn a lot of different stuff. I think conferences are great, but go to trade shows, not in one business, but go to a trade show in carpet, or in shipbuilding, or in forestry. Weird stuff. Did you know that Chuck E. Cheese happened the way it did because I attended a trade show on factory automation and discovered pneumatic pneumatic systems, which allowed me to make really cheap animals that could talk and sing and do things. Yes, that was a silly idea, but it worked. Can you imagine going into a venture capitalist and saying, I'm going to do a great big pizza parlor. It's going to be 10 times bigger than any pizza parlor you've ever seen. I'm going to fill it up with video games, but wait, there's more. We're going to have talking robotic animals. It's pretty silly. Anyway, there's an interesting crisis going on in education right now. And a lot of times, the educational institutions don't know it. But the question is, what is the value of a college education? Because too many glaring exceptions are happening. These are all people who didn't attend or didn't finish college. They've done some pretty good stuff. If you don't recognize them, they're all billionaires or what have you. I myself graduated in engineering at the absolute bottom of my class. Some would say that's a very efficient engineer. I got no grade better than I needed to in order to graduate. Others would say I was a slacker, both of which were true. Anyway, but right now, Google, Apple, they don't even ask you if you have a college degree. What they want is the quality of your mind, the quality of your intensity, your work product. Because what life wants to be right now, what business wants, is to be a perfect meritocracy. Merit, 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 merit. That's what it does. So how do you get creativity? You basically read science fiction. Every good invention has been created in the pages of science fiction. Now, you don't read the dystopian stuff. Read the really upbeat, cool stuff that's all fun and games. And don't get too carried away with time travel. Time travel is one of those real hard ones, but the rest of it is good. I mean, Diamond Age really talked an awful lot about the future of nanotechnology, a lot about the future of the iPod, learning in new ways. Neil Stephenson does some good stuff. But this is a way to sort of limber up your brain. In the United States, the reading list prepares the student for life in 18th century England, which I think is kind of a mistake. But you know, what we really want to do is we want to limber up our brain to think about the future that can be. And the future, don't be afraid of it. It's better. I would rather be a pauper today than a king 100 years ago. I have a better lifestyle than any king 100 years ago. That's because the future is really, really cool. The other thing you want to do is go to the innovation tribes. I'm really happy to hear that you have the Maker Faire here. If you want to feel excited about the future, just go to a Maker Faire. These are kids who are doing magical things, and they are going to be entrepreneurs whether they want to or not. Of course, you also have to go to Burning Man somewhere along the line. Burning Man, every time I come back from a Burning Man, it's like the floodgates of new ideas have been opened. Yes, you can do it without drugs. It's just not as fun. No. CES, Google I/O, South by Southwest, even Disney World really opens you up to a whole bunch of new ideas. And you've got to go to those tribes and play a little bit. Even Comic-Con. Can you imagine spending all that money on a costume? The guy in the blue down at the bottom, he needs to get a life. Anyway. It was a dark and stormy evening. What are we going to do with our lives? We have so many lives we can live, and entrepreneurship is one of them. Being with an entrepreneur, being part of a team, being part of a startup team is so good. It's like a road trip, but for building a business. And I always like this phrase that don't overcomplicate your business. The simplicity of business is really the ones that are successful. If you look at the core of Apple, it was about the essence of things, simplicity. So let's talk about the future a little bit. Almost every successful person begins with two beliefs. The future can be better than the present. I believe that. And I have the power to make it so. I've given it a hell of a try. I've still got 10 things on my outbox that I'm going to work on if I last that long. And I'm getting older, which is really a bummer. But as I say, it's crappy to get old, but the alternative is worse. So watch this one. This is a microgel. Things can be created now, materials that are lighter than air. Think about a skyscraper that has to be tethered to the ground. It's so light. These materials are getting to be so cheap, and a lot of people aren't aware of them, but watch them. Bimetallic energy systems, increasingly efficient. These things have been around for 100 years. But today, very small temperature differentials can create electricity. Very small amounts of electricity can create temperature differentials. So you can now have pocket-sized heaters. Think about being able to generate enough heat to run your electricity to run your cell phone by using your body heat. These are the sorts of things that are going to be coming on our future. And then there are some people I know who would never be able to charge a cell phone. They're just too cold. Singularity is coming, and they always talk about what happens when man can create technology that's smarter than the brain. I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. So far, it's always pretty good. And what's a transhuman anyway? Is it like a cyborg? Maybe. I think I'd do better cosmetic surgery than what we've seen, because, you can do that. But, in fact, I had a friend, we were drinking too much and talking, and they said, well, piercing and all the tattoos of that, people are just getting ready for bioimplants. They're just getting the world used to it. Maybe. I saw a guy who was able to do conductive and insulative tattoos so that you could actually create circuits on your brain, on your skin. That's got to be really ugly. But anyway, we see these kind of worlds. Because of the weather, you don't really need to do that here in Norway. Of course, the Apple Watch and all that sort of stuff. Let me talk about auto-drive cars. The auto-drive car is more important than world peace. And you say, what? Self-driving cars are more important than world peace. Why? Well, it turns out that during every major war that we've had, there have been more fatalities on the highways during the period of time than there was in the war. So if you're looking strictly at how many lives you want to save, the auto-drive car is clearly a better proposition. So we can basically get rid of the UN and just put their money into auto-drive cars, and we'll be a better trade-off. Or not. It's Google's got it, but Google gets the press, but every other car manufacturer has it. I've ridden in a Ford, I've ridden in an Audi, I've ridden in a Mercedes, all auto drive. It's really cool. And what's massively fun about it is that it's going to change everything. Everything. An auto drive taxi costs 30 cents a mile. Most mass transit systems, whether it be bus or rail, cost over $1 a mile, if not $3 a mile. So everybody will be taking taxis, nobody will taking mass transit. They said, but then that won't work because we'll have massive traffic jams. No. Auto drive cars increase the capacity of every lane by 20. So all of a sudden, we've got our infrastructure, we've got too many roads, we've got too many bridges, we've got too many tunnels. You guys have got a lot of tunnels. Because once you have auto drive, you can drive at 90 miles an hour. That's 230 kilometers to you guys. Man, I wished America would get on metric. Do you have any idea how stupid the English system is? It's just a foot, the size of a king's foot. I mean, that is not a good way to figure out how to make a system. I'm sorry. But anyway, so people will change drastically, and it'll be driven by insurance costs. Your insurance costs will fall through the floor because most of the claims are based on fender benders. So think of all the people that are thrown out of work. All the cab drivers, all the auto body dealers, 90% of the people who are working for the automobile insurance companies. But what the jobs are going to be created? Whole bunch of people who know how to deal with sensors and technology. There will be so many new jobs, so many new companies that will come up around the auto drive taxi business, the auto drive fast food business. I mean, the inside of a car will start to look like your living room. And now let's talk about tunnels. All cities will become parks because now all the cars can be under the ground. And you say, well, that'll be boring. You won't be able to see anything. Well, no. What you do is you'll put all the screens, all the windows, they'll turn into screens. And so now you can be driving down Trondheim in the year 2050 or 1840 or Mars. It now becomes a construct. It's a video game. I think that'll be cool. Driving down the street, and all of a sudden there's a bank robbery going on, and then there's all kinds of mayhem and that, and car crashes and that. Anyway, I want to do that. This is some of the crazy stuff. See, that's much more civilized. And then we have all these, and I'm running out of time. I think robots are coming along. Those are robots. This is a robot. This is an implant. This is DNA. This is an interesting one. This was Avatar, but right now, this one, that's actually done right now in a lab at Stanford, where they spliced things from a firefly and various things into a cell. The prediction is that all parks will be illuminated by the foliage in the next little while. And I'm running out of time, but it's fun. Oh, I got to tell you about this one, though. Nanotechnology creating new materials. So strong and so light that you can now build a space elevator. The space elevator will be able to put a kilogram into space for 1/100,000th the cost. Space habitats, wonderful things up in the sky. I can hardly wait. Then we got all kinds of stuff here in this. These are video games, printing, augmenting reality, playing Warcraft in your living room, Minecraft, excuse me, doing all that stuff. 3D printing. Your 3D printing houses, I've actually seen this puppy working. It's done by a professor at USC. He can print a house for less than $10,000. Plumbing, the whole 9 yards. So, innovation, man, it's cool, it's coming, and it's necessary, and you guys are going to be a part of it. Thank you very much.